A young girl living on an island eagerly awaits the return of her parents. When they finally arrive, they bring with them a newborn baby. Her mother introduces the baby as Shion and asks her daughter Mary to welcome her new little brother. Excitement fills Mary's heart as she lovingly kisses her baby brother, leaving him surprised. With a warm smile, she introduces herself as his big sister, which brings a cheerful expression to Shion's tiny face. 3 years later, Mary is seen bursting with energy, declaring her victory in a race. Shion, struggling to catch his breath, remarks on her incredible speed. Mary proudly proclaims that her speed comes from being the big sister. Their father soon joins them, and Mary greets him enthusiastically. He responds with affection, commenting on her bright and lively nature. Shion also greets his father, who praises him for his reliability. However, Shion humbly attributes trustworthiness to Mary. Though Mary agrees with a playful laugh, she secretly admires Shion's dependable nature. She reflects on how he helps their mother, has overcome his childhood habits, and even seems thoughtful and mature at times, which sparks a tinge of envy within her. One day, Shion is seen practicing magical incantations, which Mary assumes are lines from a play. The sight amuses her as she fondly recalls memories of her younger brother. During dinner that evening, Shion unexpectedly asks their father if monsters are real. Taken aback by the question, their father confirms the existence of monsters. He sternly warns Shion never to leave the island, reminding him of the dangers these creatures pose. He emphasizes that if Shion ever encounters a monster, he should immediately run and seek help from an adult. Shion then curiously asks his father if spirits and fairies are real. The father admits that fairies do exist, but he has no knowledge about spirits. Mary, listening intently, is visibly amazed by the unexpected direction of the conversation. Shion continues with another question, this time about magic, specifically the ability to control elements like water, fire, and air to create something extraordinary. The father, puzzled, replies that he has never encountered or even heard of such a thing as magic. Mary notices the shadow of disappointment on Shion's face and feels a deep sense of sadness for her younger brother. Despite his father's response, Shion persists, wondering aloud if magic might exist, even if it's unknown to his father. The father acknowledges that it's possible, though he emphasizes his extensive education and knowledge, stating that magic isn't something commonly recognized among ordinary people. Growing more curious, he asks Shion where he learned about monsters, fairies, and magic. Shion, however, falls silent, unwilling to answer. Mary, sensing his unease, approaches him and asks if he's feeling all right. Noticing his pale complexion, she grows concerned. Shion reassures her that he's fine, but his shaken expression reveals his inner turmoil. From that moment, Shion avoids mentioning the word magic again. 3 years later, Mary is seen training vigorously with a wooden sword under the warm island sun. Shion watches her with admiration, his eyes filled with pride. After finishing her practice, Mary sits beside him to rest. Shion, curious about her determination, asks why she trains so hard. Mary explains that as his elder sister, she feels it's her responsibility to be prepared for anything that might happen, so she can protect him. Shion, tilting his head slightly, asks what she intends to protect him from. With a confident smile, Mary lists monsters, spirits, or any other dangers that might threaten them. She reassures Shion that it's her duty as his big sister to keep him safe. Mary admitted that while her training could be challenging at times, she genuinely enjoyed it because it made her stronger and capable of protecting her little brother. She added with a hint of modesty that, although she wasn't particularly smart, she excelled in physical activities, which gave her a sense of purpose. Shion finally understood the reason behind his sister's relentless efforts and admired her dedication. As night fell, Mary continued practicing, swinging her wooden sword with determination. A friend arrived, surprised to see how long Mary had been training. The friend remarked on Mary's stamina and wondered how she hadn't grown bored. Mary brushed off the comment, inviting her friend to spar. Her friend declined, explaining that she was too tired from helping her grandfather that day. Changing the subject, the friend asked about Shion, curious if he was still at home studying as usual. Mary confirmed this, prompting her friend to comment on how different the siblings were. Reflecting on the past, Mary recalled the time Shion had asked about magic. She felt that his curiosity and continued studies were somehow connected to those questions. Just as the conversation was about to shift, an unexpected light appeared over the lake, leaving both Mary and her friend speechless. The following day, Mary persuaded Shion to accompany her to the lake. Shion hesitated, reminding her that their mother had warned them not to stray too far from home. Mary reassured him, explaining that the lake wasn't far and that no monsters had ever been seen in the area. As the sun dipped below the horizon and night crept in, Cheyenne became increasingly anxious, urging Mary to return home before their mother grew angry. Mary acknowledged his concerns, but promised that what they were waiting for would be worth the delay. Just as she spoke, glowing orbs of light began to appear over the lake, illuminating the darkening landscape. Cheyenne stared in awe, taken aback by the mysterious phenomenon. Mary explained that these lights always appeared after sunset, but even she didn't know their origin. Cheyenne asked his sister if their parents were aware of the glowing lights. Mary explained that she had brought their parents to the lake when she first saw the lights, but surprisingly, they couldn't see them. She admitted she was worried that Cheyenne might not be able to see them either. Cheyenne speculated that perhaps only children could see the lights, but Mary disagreed. She explained that some children couldn't see them, while some adults could. Additionally, some people saw fully formed lights, while others, like her, only saw them flicker and fade. Cheyenne found this very strange. Mary agreed, noting how unusual it was but likened it to magic. She reminded Cheyenne of his earlier idea about creating things with light and how she had felt discouraged when their father dismissed the idea. Cheyenne was surprised she remembered this. Mary told him that while her memory wasn't strong, she remembered everything important to him. Cheyenne was moved by her words and seemed on the verge of tears, but Mary comforted him and suggested they return home. Cheyenne thanked her for what she had done for him. Mary responded that she didn't do it for thanks, but because she wanted to see him happy and feeling better. She asked if he felt better now, and he enthusiastically confirmed that he did. The next morning at breakfast, Mary and Cheyenne finished eating quickly, surprising their parents. They rushed outside and headed back to the lake, carrying buckets. Cheyenne appeared exhausted, prompting Mary to comment that his lack of exercise and outdoor activity was to blame. Cheyenne didn't argue, and Mary asked what they were planning to do next. Cheyenne explained that he wanted to investigate the source of the glowing orbs and figure out where they came from. Mary suggested they came from the lake, but Cheyenne pointed out that while that might be true, the lights could also be coming from something inside the lake. He insisted they needed to investigate further to uncover the truth. Mary admitted she didn't fully understand, but trusted that Cheyenne was right. Mary then asked what they needed to do now. Cheyenne outlined his plan. They had 3 buckets. The first would be filled with water, rocks, and sand. The second with water and plants, and the third with water and fish. Mary agreed to follow Cheyenne's instructions, even if she didn't fully understand them. Together, they filled the first 2 buckets, but the third required catching fish. While attempting this, Cheyenne laughed, prompting Mary to ask why. Cheyenne expressed his happiness at having her by his side and thanked her for her help. Mary reassured him, saying it was her duty as his older sister. She added that she had free time, which was why she insisted on assisting him, and admitted that if magic existed, she wanted to witness it too. Cheyenne promised that if magic were real, she would be the first to know. At that moment, Mary finally caught a fish, and they placed it in the bucket. As they watched the fish, Mary's friend Rose appeared. Rose asked if the boy with Mary was her younger brother, and Mary confirmed it, introducing Cheyenne to Rose. After Cheyenne greeted her, Rose introduced herself proudly, causing Mary to dismissively tell Cheyenne not to pay attention to her boasting, because she was just an ordinary girl. Rose objected to Mary's bluntness and asked what they were doing. Mary explained they were fishing, but Rose inquired why they had chosen this particular lake. Mary replied that Cheyenne knew the reason. When Rose asked if it was because of the glowing orbs, Cheyenne confirmed it. Rose admitted that she also visited the lake to learn more about the lights. Cheyenne asked if she had any information about them, but Rose said she simply enjoyed observing them. As the sun set, the glowing orbs began appearing over the lake, but did not emerge from their buckets. Cheyenne theorized that the orbs might be coming from something else in the lake. Rose remarked that it would be difficult to discover everything living in the lake. Determined to investigate, Cheyenne decided to dive into the water. Mary joined him, and soon Cheyenne managed to catch one of the glowing orbs. He noted that it was warm to the touch, and Mary followed suit. When Cheyenne tried to submerge his head to see where the orbs were coming from, the lake's darkness made it impossible. Cheyenne concluded that the glowing orbs must originate from a living creature in the water. Mary asked how he knew, and Cheyenne explained that the changing locations of the orbs indicated movement, meaning the source was mobile. They left the water, and Cheyenne thanked Mary for her help. She told him that thanks weren't necessary because they were family. Rose then caught another fish, this time a female, which was difficult because female fish stayed in deeper waters. When they placed the female fish with the male in the bucket, glowing orbs began to appear. Shion realized the truth. The glowing orbs were connected to the courtship behavior of the fish. Mary asked what courtship meant, and Rose explained it was the way male fish expressed their feelings to females so they could start a family. Mary innocently declared that she would marry Shion, but Shion became upset and firmly stated that siblings couldn't marry. The next day, Mary was upset because her mother had scolded her for saying she wanted to marry Shion. She asked Shion if what she had said was so wrong, explaining that all she wanted was to stay with him forever. Shion reassured her, saying they didn't need to marry to remain together, they were already family. Mary, however, pointed out that they would eventually marry other people and go their separate ways. Shion firmly told her he would never do that and promised to stay by her side forever. Mary responded that what he was saying was difficult, but Shion insisted he would do it for her because she was very important to him. He hugged her tightly. Mary was deeply moved by his words and began to cry. Suddenly, Shion started glowing. He exclaimed that it must be magical energy imprinted on him when he touched the glowing orbs, activated now by their bond. He explained that his declaration of never marrying in order to stay with her was the ultimate expression of devotion, which had triggered this magical reaction. Overwhelmed, Mary felt embarrassed and ran off. Shion reflected on the experience, concluding that magic did not yet exist in this world because the techniques to create it had not been invented. Determined, he declared that in this world where he had been reborn, he would create magic himself. The story flashes back to Shion's previous life, where he eagerly awaited his 30th birthday. According to a legend he firmly believed, men who remained virgins until the age of 30 would gain the ability to use magic. With only 10 seconds remaining until he reached this milestone, Shion was filled with excitement. As the final second passed, he leaped with joy, confident he could now test the legend for himself. He raised his hand, attempting to conjure a fireball, but nothing happened. Undeterred, he tried other magical gestures, yet no results came. Frustration mounted as he collapsed to the ground in despair. Refusing to give up, Shion grabbed a magic book, hoping the incantations within might unlock his powers. He recited spells with determination, but the results were the same. Nothing. Defeated, he slumped to the floor, muttering that magic didn't exist in this world. The realization crushed him, and he lamented how dull life felt without magic, the one thing he had believed could bring him true joy. Resigned to his disappointment, Shion decided to go to bed, reminding himself he had work the next day. However, just as he was preparing to sleep, his heart suddenly stopped. He collapsed to the floor, unable to breathe. As he lay there, memories of his life flooded back to him. He recalled his ordinary existence, marked by striving for knowledge and self-improvement, yet never finding true happiness. The one source of excitement had been his belief in the possibility of magic, an impossible dream that had nonetheless driven him forward. With these bittersweet thoughts, his consciousness faded and his life came to an end. But Shion's story didn't end there. He awoke in a new life, reborn into the world where he now lived. Back in the present, Shion reflected on a recent conversation with his father, who had confirmed the absence of magic in this world. The disappointment from that conversation had led Shion to suppress his dreams of magic, choosing instead to focus on studying and working hard. Yet, that belief seemed destined to slip away again, until the moment he embraced his sister, and the impossible happened. The magical energy that had emerged from within him reignited the hope he thought he had lost. Motivated by the earlier surge of magical energy, Shion decided to test his abilities again. He focused intently, attempting to summon a fireball, but nothing happened. Frustrated yet cautious, he resolved not to jump to conclusions about the existence of magic in this world until he gathered more evidence. As he pondered his next steps, Mary entered the room. Shion greeted her with a warm smile and said, "You came at the perfect time. Sit with me." Mary explained that she had come to let him know dinner was ready and invited him to eat with her. However, at his request, she agreed to stay for a moment. She sat down, but Shion's intense gaze made her feel embarrassed. Breaking the silence, Shion looked at Mary and said, "I love you." Mary, caught off guard, blushed deeply, overwhelmed by his sudden declaration. In that moment, magical energy surged out of Shion once more, just as he had anticipated. He muttered to himself, frustrated by the realization that expressing emotions seemed to be the key to releasing the energy. If this is the only way to trigger it, it's such a ridiculous limitation, he thought aloud. Mary, however, was visibly upset. She accused him of treating her like a tool for his experiments, using her emotions for his own benefit. Shion quickly tried to explain, insisting that his feelings were genuine and that he wasn't manipulating her. Mary, still skeptical, accused him of lying. He firmly repeated that he was telling the truth, his sincerity causing her to blush again. Shion was surprised by her reaction, and after a tense moment, Mary eventually forgave him. However, she warned him not to repeat such behavior in the future. Changing the subject, Mary asked if Shion had discovered anything new. He explained that the magical energy was released when he expressed strong emotions, but he doubted this was the only way it could be triggered. Determined to explore another approach, Shion decided to focus on happy memories, hoping to evoke joyful feelings and trigger the magical energy again. He closed his eyes and let his mind wander to moments that brought him happiness. As the warm memories filled his thoughts, the magical energy began to flow out of him once more. Mary, watching in awe, cheered at the sight. She excitedly declared that even if all Shion could do was glow, it was still an incredible ability. Shion silently agreed, his heart swelling with a mix of joy and relief. Even if it was something as simple as glowing, he had proven to himself that magic did indeed exist in this world. Comparing the sensation to an electric eel generating a current, Shion described the release of the energy in detail. His face lit up with an almost foolishly happy expression, overwhelmed by the thrill of his discovery. Mary, sharing in his joy, gently patted his head and told him how glad she was to see him this happy for the first time. Shion looked at her, his smile softening, and said, "I truly am very happy." Sitting down to reflect, Shion began piecing together his understanding of magic. He identified several important points. First, he realized that expressing emotions was the key to releasing magical energy, but sustaining those emotions for extended periods would be incredibly difficult. Second, he noted that this process drained him significantly. Each time he released the energy, he felt completely exhausted and unable to continue. The third and most crucial discovery Shion made was that fully depleting his magical reserves caused them to grow. Each time he completely exhausted his energy, his capacity expanded, allowing him to hold more magical energy the next time. Additionally, he realized that only individuals with the potential for magic could perceive or sense the glowing energy. Those without such potential could neither see the light nor feel its warmth. Despite these breakthroughs, Shion grew increasingly frustrated. He still couldn't generate the glowing orbs he had witnessed in the lake and couldn't understand why. He theorized that his current magical reserves were too small, preventing him from creating them. This realization weighed heavily on him, leaving him disheartened. Comparing himself to the fish, which seemed to produce the glowing orbs with ease, made him feel even more inadequate. The fish appeared to have a natural abundance of magical energy, something he lacked. Sitting quietly, Shion fell into deep thought, trying to devise a way to increase his magical power. He reflected on his progress and analyzed every discovery he had made so far. As he pondered, a sense of tension built within him, eventually leading to a mental roadblock. Yet, even in his frustration, Shion refused to give up. Clenching his fists, he declared to himself with unwavering determination, "I've come this far. I won't give up until I figure out how to use magic." Shion recalled what he had done with the fish and realized something important. He released his magical energy and attempted to focus it entirely in his hand, but the effort proved to be incredibly difficult. He realized that thinking about emotional triggers while simultaneously directing the magic to his hand was even more challenging. It was like trying to focus on two entirely different things at once. Then, he understood that he had approached it in the wrong order. Trying again with a new strategy, Shion successfully directed the magical energy to his hand. A goofy, triumphant smile spread across his face. Encouraged by his progress, he tried using the energy by striking the wall with his hand. However, the result was disappointing. His hand only glowed with ordinary light, and the impact injured him. Despite this, Shion was thrilled with the small victory, declaring it a step forward in his journey. His excitement reignited his determination to continue training. Later, Shion's father, Sister Mary, and Rose gathered in the garden to train under his father's guidance. Shion, however, expressed his reluctance, stating that he didn't want to fight anyone and saw no need to learn swordsmanship. His father explained that swordsmanship wasn't just about fighting humans, it was essential for defending against monsters outside the city. Rose chimed in, saying she wanted to learn swordsmanship to protect herself, which inspired Mary to feel excited about the training. Shion, on the other hand, felt disheartened, wishing he could train in magic instead. As the session progressed, Shion was seen lying on the ground, completely exhausted. His father remarked that he hadn't expected Cheyenne to be so bad at it, and Cheyenne agreed with him. Meanwhile, Cheyenne's father praised Rose, noting her natural talent. Turning to Mary, he asked to see how much she had improved. Mary prepared herself enthusiastically, and the sparring began. She launched a swift and energetic attack that caught everyone's attention. She even attempted a deceptive maneuver, but her father saw through it and defeated her. Though disappointed by her loss, Mary's father praised her abilities and offered advice for improvement, assuring her that with a few more years of practice, she would become highly skilled. Cheyenne and Rose watched Mary with admiration, impressed by her determination and progress. Cheyenne resumed his magic training, focusing on releasing all his magical energy through his hand. Despite his efforts, he failed again, leaving him frustrated. Reflecting on his progress, he realized that while he initially could only release his energy twice a day, he had gradually increased this to 20 times. However, his progress had plateaued, and he concluded that he needed to improve his technique to achieve better results. While Cheyenne was deep in thought, his father approached him and mentioned he was heading to the city of Astoria, inviting Cheyenne to accompany him. Overjoyed, Cheyenne eagerly agreed. Astoria was described as a mid-sized city within their region. Upon arrival, Cheyenne's father explained that they were visiting a blacksmith to pick up some supplies and warned them not to wander too far to avoid getting lost. Cheyenne, although thrilled to be in a new place, felt slightly disappointed because he wanted to explore magical knowledge in the city. Nonetheless, they began exploring and purchasing necessary items. As their father spoke with a vendor, Cheyenne and Mary waited outside. Mary let out a strange laugh, puzzling Cheyenne. When he asked about it, Mary brushed it off, saying she always laughed like that. Shortly after, their father returned and announced that they would now visit the blacksmith. At the blacksmith shop, the blacksmith warmly greeted them, revealing himself to be an old friend of Cheyenne's father. He immediately guessed that Cheyenne's father had come to collect his order. Cheyenne's father confirmed this, and the blacksmith proudly mentioned that he had crafted a high-quality sword, noting it was for Mary. Mary was stunned by this revelation. The blacksmith introduced himself to Cheyenne and Mary, and they introduced themselves in return. Impressed by their politeness, the blacksmith joked, "These kids are so well-mannered, I doubt they're really yours." Cheyenne's father jokingly threatened to hit him, but the blacksmith dodged and went to retrieve Mary's sword. The blacksmith handed Mary her sword, explaining that he had made it shorter and lighter to suit her, ensuring she could use it with ease. Mary was awestruck and overjoyed with her new weapon, admiring its craftsmanship. As they prepared to leave, Mary seemed a bit downcast. She turned to Cheyenne and said, "I'm the only one who received something, and you didn't. I feel bad about that." Cheyenne reassured her, explaining that the sword was also a birthday gift for her, and he had no desire to own a sword himself. Mary, however, grew frustrated, insisting that he should have received something too. "You need to be more selfish," she scolded him. Cheyenne smiled and replied, "I am selfish. I ask for your help with so many things." As they continued walking, Cheyenne's attention was drawn to a boy standing nearby with a cage that held a fairy. Cheyenne pointed it out to his father, who immediately warned him against going near that place or learning anything about it. Realizing he had upset his father, Cheyenne apologized, explaining that he was simply curious. However, in his mind, he was certain of what he had seen. This was a place where fairies were sold. The next day, a man trudged through the forest under heavy rain, muttering to himself about needing to return home before the firewood he carried became wet and useless. Suddenly, a young boy came running toward him, soaked and terrified, collapsing onto the muddy ground. The boy, gasping for breath, cried out, "They've taken everyone! I must inform the king." Alarmed, the man knelt beside the boy and urgently asked who had attacked them. The boy, trembling with fear, whispered, "The trolls! They've taken everyone!" The man froze, fear gripping him at the mention of trolls. Elsewhere, Cheyenne and Mary were engrossed in their training. Cheyenne focused on maintaining his magical energy within his hand, working diligently to extend his control. Mary, watching closely, celebrated his new personal record, clapping enthusiastically. Cheyenne thanked her, attributing his progress to her encouragement and support. However, Mary noticed his subdued expression and asked why he didn't seem happy. Cheyenne reassured her with a faint smile, insisting that he was thrilled to have improved his control. Still, he downplayed the achievement, lamenting that all he could manage was producing light. Mary, ever encouraging, pointed out that the light he emitted felt warmer and brighter than before. With a playful smirk, she teased him, calling his magic just light and nothing more, eliciting a laugh from Shion. He remarked that he yearned to try something more dynamic, like conjuring fireballs or wielding lightning. Shion theorized that understanding the connection between emotions and magic would be key to unlocking these abilities. His thoughts wandered to the fairy he had seen the day before, pondering how fairies seemed intrinsically tied to natural phenomena. He understood his parents' disapproval of dealing with them, yet his curiosity lingered. Before he could dwell further, Mary interrupted his thoughts, annoyed at being ignored. Shion quickly apologized, shifting his focus back to her. Suddenly, a commotion erupted downstairs. Shion and Mary rushed to investigate and found several villagers gathered around their father, voices raised with urgency. The group was requesting weapons for everyone. Shion, intrigued, asked his father what had happened. Their father confirmed the grim news. Trolls had appeared in the region. Shion's initial reaction was excitement. He saw this as an opportunity to study the trolls, believing he might glean knowledge that could advance his magical abilities. However, the tense atmosphere and worried faces of the villagers reminded him of the gravity of the situation. Slowly, he began to understand the magnitude of the threat trolls posed, formidable, dangerous creatures that were not to be underestimated in this world. Shion's father instructed the townspeople to gather all the elderly, women, and children in his home, while the able-bodied prepared for battle. Mary, trying to put on a brave face, reassured Shion that everything would be fine, but the trembling of her hand revealed her deep fear. She promised to protect him if anything happened, her voice filled with determination. As Shion's father and the warriors prepared to leave, he tried to calm his family, assuring them that only 2 trolls had been spotted and that they would be dealt with swiftly. Before he left, Shion hurriedly stopped him, insisting on a brief word. Reluctantly, his father agreed. Shion asked if trolls had enough intelligence or strength to reach the 2nd floor of their home. His father dismissed the idea, stating that trolls were dumb and wouldn't be able to. Shion proposed that everyone should hide on the 2nd floor as an extra precaution, just in case. After considering the suggestion, Shion's father agreed and instructed the villagers to follow Shion's plan immediately. The villagers gathered on the 2nd floor with Shion's family, anxiously awaiting news of the battle. Shion couldn't help but wonder how much time had passed since his father and the warriors had left. Outside, the storm raged on, the howling wind and thunder adding to the tension. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps shook the house as one of the trolls arrived. It peered through the windows of the empty basement, searching for people but finding no one. Frustrated, the troll roared and began smashing the front door, the loud thuds echoing ominously. Shion and the villagers froze in fear. The noise stopped momentarily, raising their hopes that the troll might have left, but the shattering sound of a window breaking dashed those hopes. It had found another way in. Mary, trembling with fear, whispered to Shion, asking if the troll could reach them. Shion, trying to stay calm, urged her to remain silent, warning that any noise might attract it. The troll began climbing toward the 2nd floor, its heavy footsteps echoing as it approached the room where they were hiding. It stopped outside the door, sniffing the air, but hearing no sound, it started to move away. For a fleeting moment, relief washed over everyone. Suddenly, a lightning strike illuminated the room, and the villagers, startled, screamed in panic. The troll immediately turned back toward the noise. It began pounding on the door with relentless force, each strike sending splinters flying until the door shattered completely. The troll entered the room, towering and menacing, its grotesque form filling the doorway. The villagers stood frozen in terror, paralyzed by the sight. Shion's heart sank as he realized how foolish he had been to ever wish to study such a dangerous creature. His mother, acting on instinct, stepped in front of her children, shielding them with her body. The troll let out a strange, mocking laugh, its guttural voice reverberating through the room. Shion's mind raced as he observed the creature's behavior. It wasn't entirely mindless. It seemed to relish its overwhelming advantage in strength. Overwhelmed with fear, Shion's mother collapsed to the ground, her strength failing. Mary, driven by desperation to protect her family, seized her sword and faced the troll head-on. She reminded Shion of her promise to protect him, her voice trembling but resolute. But the troll, with its immense strength, easily deflected her efforts. With a single swipe, it knocked the sword from her hands, sending it clattering against the wall and struck Mary to the ground. As the troll loomed over her, ready to deliver the final blow, their mother summoned the last of her strength. Crawling forward, she threw herself over Mary, shielding her daughter with her own body. But even then, it did not relent, advancing further with the intent to finish them both. Shion, paralyzed by despair, crumbled to the floor. He blamed himself for his helplessness, for his inability to protect the people he loved most. Tears blurred his vision as the scene unfolded before him. But as the troll raised its massive hand for another strike, something within Shion ignited. Desperation overtook fear, and he leapt forward, grabbing the troll's arm with all his might. This isn't enough, Shion thought, but then he felt something astonishing. The troll's body radiated magical energy, a force strikingly similar to his own. The realization jolted him into action. The villagers, frozen in shock, watched as an ethereal light surrounded Shion. Only Mary and Rose could see the magical energy emanating from him. Shion clenched his hand tighter, channeling every ounce of his energy into his grip. At first, the troll laughed mockingly, unaffected by his effort, but as Shion's power intensified, the troll's arm began to burn. The searing heat forced the creature to cry out in pain, and in a desperate move, it hurled Shion across the room. The troll stumbled but remained standing. Shion, undeterred, sprang back into action. He climbed onto the troll's back and shouted with all his might, "Burn!" Gathering his remaining magical energy into his hand, he pressed it against the troll's head. The troll let out a deafening scream as flames erupted. Shion's flames consumed the creature entirely, leaving it lifeless on the ground. As the troll's body crumpled, Shion stood over it, breathing heavily, unable to fully grasp what had just transpired. The room was silent, the villagers staring at him with wide eyes, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Uneasy, under their gaze, Shion muttered, "Why are you all looking at me like I'm the monster here?" Breaking the tension, Rose stepped forward, her voice steady as she said, "We survived because of you." Her words reassured Shion, easing the weight of his self-doubt. But the relief was short-lived as Mary's panicked voice brought his attention back to their mother, who lay writhing in pain on the floor. Mary tried to approach their mother, but Shion and Rose stopped her, recognizing the severity of the situation. Shion knelt beside his mother and examined her condition, noting her pale complexion and heavy bleeding. He concluded that stopping the bleeding was the immediate priority. With care, he instructed the villagers to help move his mother to a nearby bed. Once she was laid down, Shion urgently asked if anyone among the villagers had medical experience, but the silence was deafening. Thinking quickly, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He asked if anyone knew how to sew, and after a brief pause, a woman hesitantly raised her hand. Shion turned to her for assistance and instructed the others to retrieve sewing supplies, clean cloth, and alcohol from his mother's room. He pleaded with them to hurry, emphasizing the critical lack of time. As the villagers scrambled to gather the necessary items, a young child approached Shion, gently holding his hand and saying, "Thank you for saving us." Shion managed a brief nod but remained focused on his mother's condition, determined to save her. When the supplies arrived, Shion and the woman prepared to begin. With trembling hands, Shion carefully cut the fabric around his mother's wound, exposing the deep injury. His heart raced with worry, particularly about the possibility that the troll's claws might carry venom. Despite his fears, Shion steeled himself, knowing this was their only chance. Turning to the seamstress, he explained, "Let's begin now." Confused, the woman asked what she needed to do. Shion calmly explained the necessity of stitching the wound closed, emphasizing that leaving it open could result in his mother's death. He reassured her, "Don't worry, I'll guide you every step of the way." The woman hesitated, visibly uneasy about causing additional pain to Shion's mother. Shion, resolute, replied firmly, "You have two choices. Hurt her a little now and save her life, or do nothing and let her die." When she still seemed reluctant, Shion knelt before her, desperation in his eyes, and pleaded, "Please, save my mother." Moved by his sincerity, the woman reluctantly agreed. Under Shion's guidance, they cleaned the wound thoroughly before beginning the stitching process. The work was slow and painstaking, with both of them battling their nerves. Despite the difficulty, they successfully closed the wound. Afterward, Shion noticed that his mother's condition seemed to stabilize, her breathing becoming less labored. Shion turned to the woman and expressed his heartfelt gratitude. She humbly replied, "I only did what you told me." She then asked if his mother would recover. Shion, exhausted but hopeful, explained that they would need to monitor her closely for a while to ensure no complications arose. Shion and Mary embraced tightly, their bond strengthened by the trials they had faced. The warriors, led by their father, returned to the village, victorious against the trolls, but reporting unsettling news of tracks indicating a larger group nearby. While some villagers had sustained injuries in the battle, no further lives had been lost. After ensuring the village's security, the group made their way home. The following day, a doctor visited to examine Cheon's mother. He confirmed that her injuries, though severe, had not reached her bones or vital organs. He commended the precision of the stitching, describing it as exceptional. When inquiring about who had performed the work, Cheon's father attributed it to someone in the village, avoiding further questions. Cheon's mother regained consciousness later that day, expressing gratitude for the care she had received. Mary, overcome with guilt, approached her mother, apologizing and blaming herself for the events. Her mother, with warmth and reassurance, praised Mary's bravery and efforts to protect the family, encouraging her to take pride in her actions. Cheon's father, who had been observing the situation quietly, began to piece together the events. He expressed astonishment at Cheon's actions, questioning how he had acquired the knowledge to treat such severe injuries and how he had defeated the troll. Cheon, unwilling to reveal too much, gave a vague explanation, leaving his father to draw his own conclusions. The burn marks on the troll led to speculation, and the mention of magic resurfaced. Cheon faced the weight of his father's concerns about the dangers of standing out and the risks associated with pursuing magic. The warnings left him conflicted, torn between his growing understanding of his abilities and the need to protect his family. Mary's unwavering support highlighted Cheon's achievements and reminded their father of the lives saved through his actions. While their father acknowledged the importance of what had been accomplished, he remained cautious, emphasizing the potential dangers that could arise from continuing down this path. Mary's emotions surged as she passionately argued against their father's concerns, emphasizing that there was no proof magic was inherently dangerous. Their father, frustrated by her defiance, countered sharply, pointing out that a power capable of killing trolls could hardly be considered safe. He argued that the danger of magic would only become apparent when it was too late to avoid catastrophe. Cheon reflected on the countless hours he had devoted to his research and made a firm declaration. He would not abandon his pursuit of magic. His father, anger rising, questioned why Cheon refused to heed his warnings. Cheon, maintaining his composure, explained that he understood his father's fears, but that abandoning his research would leave him miserable. To Cheon, magic represented not just power but his dreams and aspirations. Their father, attempting to reason with him, argued that Cheon's perspective might change as he grew older. Cheon, unwavering in his conviction, responded that he would never waver in his pursuit. His firm stance left his father momentarily silent. Cheon added that if his studies became a burden to the family, his father could disown him. The words struck a chord, and the room grew heavy with tension. Mary, deeply affected by the conversation, remained quiet, her sadness evident. After a long silence, Cheon's father asked if his dedication to his research was truly so unwavering. Cheon replied without hesitation, affirming his commitment even if it meant being rejected by everyone around him. His father, seeing his son's determination, finally relented. He agreed to let Cheon continue his research on the condition that he provide regular reports on his progress. He made it clear that if he ever discovered Cheon doing something dangerous, he would intervene immediately. Cheon, surprised by his father's response, asked for confirmation, wondering if he was truly being given permission to pursue his dream. His father sighed, acknowledging that he could do little to change his son's determination. He told Cheon to follow his path, but warned him to remain mindful of the risks. Placing a hand on Cheon's shoulder, he encouraged his son to hold his head high and to pursue his dream with courage. Despite his earlier reservations, he promised to support Cheon as a father, no matter the challenges ahead. The resolution filled Mary with joy. She celebrated Cheon's perseverance, congratulating him enthusiastically.
As the fire crackled, Cheon's father adjusted the firewood before turning to his son, asking if it was sufficient. Cheon confirmed that it was perfect. Mary, observing the scene, expressed her curiosity about what they were doing. Cheon explained that he wanted to experiment with magic. Gathering magical energy in his hand, he approached the fire, and to everyone's astonishment, the flames turned blue and gathered into his palm. Before he could fully grasp what was happening, his father reacted quickly, dousing him with water in alarm. He insisted that the experiment was too dangerous. Mary rushed to check on her brother, but Cheon reassured her that he was fine. Reflecting on what had just occurred, he shared his realization magical energy merged with natural energy, altering its properties. He pointed out that when he infused the flames with his energy, they changed color and became influenced by his power, proving that magical energy could interact with natural phenomena. His father, unable to see the magic itself but witnessing the effects firsthand, admitted that he had no choice but to believe what he was seeing. Mary, feeling left out, expressed her frustration that they seemed to understand each other while she struggled to grasp what was happening. Shion, wanting to reassure her, reminded her of the many things she excelled at and acknowledged that he had only discovered magical energy thanks to her. Hearing this made Mary happy, her frustration momentarily forgotten. Later, Shion imagined himself launching a fireball and began laughing foolishly at the thought. His father, puzzled by the reaction, looked to Mary for an explanation. She simply shrugged, explaining that Shion always acted this way whenever he uncovered something new about magic. Encouraged by his progress, Shion continued experimenting, testing his newfound understanding of magical energy. His father, though initially wary, stood by to assist and extinguish any accidental fires if necessary. Shion's father, recognizing his son's relentless efforts, supported him wholeheartedly, ensuring he had everything needed to continue his research. Shion kept pushing himself until exhaustion set in, at which point his father suggested taking a break. Leaving briefly, he returned with a warm drink, hoping it would help Shion recover. Grateful, Shion accepted it, drying himself off as he reflected on his progress. Rose soon arrived, curious about what Shion had been up to. Noticing his soaked clothes, she assumed it was another magic experiment. Shion confirmed her suspicions and explained what had happened, surprising her with the details. He mentioned that he would show her the results later, as his father had strictly forbidden him from using magic without supervision. Rose, taken aback, found it unexpected that Shion had shared his secret with his father. He explained that his father, rather than opposing him, had shown great interest in the subject, perhaps even more than Shion himself. Rose, impressed, remarked on how incredibly supportive his father was. Turning the conversation in a different direction, Shion expressed his gratitude toward Rose for what she had done for him. When she asked what he meant, he recalled the day he had killed the ghoul and how her kindness had comforted him during that difficult moment. Rose, touched by his words, insisted that she should be the one thanking him, as they were all safe because of his actions. As their conversation continued, Rose brought up Mary's intense training, noting that she seemed more determined than ever. She speculated that the events from 2 days ago weighed heavily on her, fueling her resolve. Shion acknowledged this, understanding her need to push herself, but he remained confident that she would overcome it. Rose reminded him that Mary was counting on his support, urging him to always be there for her. Meanwhile, Mary trained relentlessly, the memories of what had transpired still lingering in her mind. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her, driving her to push herself beyond her limits, determined never to feel powerless again. Shion began summarizing his discoveries about magical energy. First, he noted that the more magical energy he gathered, the larger the flame became. Second, he experimented with other heat sources, finding that if the temperature was high enough, his hand would also ignite with flames. Third, he observed that when his body was charged with normal magical energy, touching fire caused regular flames to appear, rather than the blue ones he had seen earlier. Lastly, he discovered that covering his hands with a material did not prevent him from gathering flames, and he remained unaffected by the heat. After assessing these results, he concluded that the energy he currently possessed was dangerous and lacked practical application. His father found the experiment fascinating but acknowledged the difficulty of controlling fire magic. Shion considered the problem and suggested that he might gain better control if he could gather magical energy a little farther from his hand rather than directly in contact with his skin. To his surprise, Mary revealed that she had already managed to do this, adding that Rose could as well. Shion, shocked by their ability, observed their demonstration and quickly acknowledged their talent, calling them geniuses. Encouraged by their success, Shion attempted to replicate the technique with Mary and Rose guiding him. After several attempts and corrections, he finally succeeded, gathering magical energy at a short distance from his hand before releasing it. Overwhelmed with joy at his progress, he celebrated the breakthrough. However, despite the clear evidence of his abilities, his father still couldn't see the energy, leaving him in a state of disbelief. Later, Shion went outside to test a new idea. Holding a lighter in his hand, he prepared for another experiment. His father, observing, asked if he needed to ignite the flame first, but Shion confidently stated that it wasn't necessary. Concentrating, he gathered magical energy and channeled it through the lighter, successfully launching a fireball. The sight left everyone in awe. As Shion watched the flames dissipate, he reflected on the moment, realizing that the magic he had once dreamed of in his past life had now become a reality. Overcome with excitement, he laughed foolishly at his discovery while everyone congratulated him on his achievement. Deciding to give this newfound power a name, he called it the Flame, acknowledging that for now, it lacked any real offensive capability. Time passed, and Shion was seen working alongside his father, harvesting crops. He noted that a month had passed since the last ghoul attack, a rare period of peace for their village. Later, exhausted from training, he expressed his desire to continue pushing himself further, determined began to expand his magical energy reserves. Each time he used his new spell, it drained him quickly, highlighting the need for greater endurance. Meanwhile, Mary immersed herself in intense training, pushing her body to the limit. Her hands bore visible blisters from the constant strain. Their father, noticing her condition, insisted that she stop and rest. However, Mary reminded him of his own words that more training would make her stronger. Although he agreed with the principle, he warned her against pushing beyond her limits. Xian also urged her to stop and take a break, but Mary refused to listen, continuing her relentless training. Frustrated by her stubbornness, Xian raised his voice, demanding that she stop. The outburst upset Mary, who stormed off without another word. Their father, seeing Xian's concern, reassured him that Mary was simply feeling pressured and burdened by responsibility. He assured Xian that she would be fine in time. However, Xian remained deeply troubled, unable to shake the sadness he felt for his sister's struggles. Xian sat with his father, his mind buzzing with new ideas. He asked about electricity, but his father had never heard of it before. When Xian explained that it was similar to lightning, he wondered if any animals or plants could produce something like it. His father, unfamiliar with the concept, dismissed the idea at first. However, he then recalled hearing someone mention something resembling lightning. His friend Grast had once spoken of such a phenomenon. Without hesitation, he suggested they travel to the city of Asteria to speak with Grast directly. Before leaving, Xian proposed that Mary join them, but she declined, stating that she had tasks to complete. Xian was surprised by her decision. As he prepared to leave, Mary escorted him to the door, bidding him farewell in a somewhat dismissive tone before shutting the door behind him. Though she tried to hide it, Xian sensed that her injuries were still causing her pain. Upon arriving in Asteria, Xian and his father met with Grast, who confirmed that something called lightning ore existed. When asked about obtaining it, Grast explained that while it wasn't rare, it was extremely heavy and dangerous due to the strange energy it emitted, making transportation a significant challenge. Xian immediately started considering solutions. If lightning ore was a metal that emitted electrical energy, transporting it safely would require insulation. He then asked Grast about the existence of trees that produced a sticky white liquid, hoping to find something similar to rubber. Grast, however, had never heard of such a tree. Xian then considered using glass as an insulator, but doubted its durability for this purpose. Instead, he asked Grast if he had any rock glass, a mineral he suspected could work as an alternative insulator. After describing its characteristics, Grast recognized the material and referred to it as paper crystal. He retrieved a small piece he had kept because of its unique and beautiful appearance. Holding it, Xian realized that paper crystal was used for making insulators, making it a potential solution. However, he was unsure how to reshape it for his needs. Grast, puzzled by Xian's train of thought, commented on how difficult it was to understand how children thought. Xian's father, watching his son work through the problem, simply remarked that Xian didn't think like a child at all. Wanting to secure more of the material, Xian asked Grast if he knew where to find a larger piece. Grast directed them to the trade district, where it was sold for 4,000 realms. Xian hesitated at the cost, recognizing that such an amount could provide a luxurious meal for an entire family. However, his father immediately decided to make the purchase, reassuring Xian that if he ever needed something, he should ask without hesitation. If it was within his means, he would provide it. If not, he would simply say so. Xian, touched by his father's support, felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. After acquiring the lightning ore, Xian eagerly began experimenting. His mother, excited to see her son working with magic, watched with anticipation. Gathering magical energy, he directed it toward the ore, attempting to interact with its unique properties. However, as soon as the two forces clashed, an explosion erupted. Xian's father initially assumed that his son had failed in his experiment and reassured him, reminding him that failure was a natural part of progress. He shared his own struggles with mastering fire magic, encouraging Xian not to feel discouraged. However, Xian suddenly erupted into laughter, his usual foolish giggle signaling an important realization. His mother, seeing his joy, felt relieved and happy, though his father remained confused, unable to grasp what had happened. Xian, overwhelmed with excitement, explained his discovery. He had expected the lightning ore to react like fire, but when he used magic on it, his hands didn't ignite. This meant that his magical energy possessed properties beyond simple ignition, opening up the possibility of using magic in various ways he had only imagined before. His findings confirmed that his energy could be manipulated in more diverse forms than he had initially thought. Later, Xian sat alone in his room, deep in thought. Frustration built up inside him as he tried to figure out how to convert electrical energy into something he could control and release freely. As he pondered, he realized he had been approaching the problem the wrong way. His past experiments had always involved releasing magical energy in the form of a sphere, but there was no reason why that had to be the only way. Concentrating on changing the shape of his energy, he attempted to manipulate it differently, and it worked. The energy responded exactly as he imagined, moving in a form beyond the standard sphere. Thrilled with his discovery, Xian rushed to share the news with Mary. However, when he arrived at her room, he found it empty. Noticing that her bandages had been removed, a sense of worry settled over him. He set out to search for her, eventually finding her by the river. She was training with all her strength, pushing herself beyond her limits. Just as he arrived, her training stick splintered under the force of her strikes. Mary, startled by his presence, demanded to know why he was there. Shion, ignoring her tone, expressed his regret. He admitted that she had always been there to support him, yet when she needed him the most, he had failed to be there for her. Mary, however, dismissed the idea that she was upset about his absence. Instead, she confessed the deeper reason behind her turmoil. She had trained relentlessly to protect him, believing it to be her duty. Yet, when the moment of crisis arrived, she had been powerless, while he had been the one to save them all. She was grateful to have survived, but struggled with the frustration of her own helplessness. Shion, trying to understand, asked if that was why she resented him. Mary immediately denied it, affirming her love for him as her younger brother. However, she admitted that she couldn't forgive herself for being weak. Seeing Shion surpass her in strength had made her feel inadequate, fueling her determination to become stronger and braver. Shion, realizing the depth of her emotions, understood the reason behind her relentless training. She confirmed that every time she looked at him, she was reminded of that fateful day, and the memory haunted her. Overwhelmed with emotion, Mary broke down in tears, unable to hold back her frustration any longer. Without hesitation, Shion stepped forward and embraced her, his heart heavy with guilt for not noticing her pain sooner. He apologized for not being there for her, for failing to support her when she needed him the most. Mary, still emotional, apologized as well for being harsh with him. Shion reassured her, telling her not to hesitate if she ever needed him. No matter what happened, he promised to support her with everything he had. Rose stood nearby, her expression filled with curiosity and slight confusion as she watched how closely Mary clung to Shion. It had been this way ever since they had shared their heartfelt conversation by the river. From that day forward, Mary seemed unable to maintain any distance from her brother, her presence always lingering by his side. Eventually, Shion turned to her and gently asked her to step back a little. Mary's face fell with disappointment as she asked why. Shion explained that he needed space to test his magic. Feeling slightly hurt, Mary questioned if she was holding him back, but Shion quickly reassured her that she wasn't. He simply needed a bit more room for his experiments. Though reluctant, Mary moved aside, clearly unhappy about the separation. With the space cleared, Shion began his next magical experiment. He discovered that he could shape his magical energy in any form he desired. However, this realization came with a limitation. Expanding the energy made it thinner and less dense, reducing its ability to interact with external elements. Recognizing this flaw, Shion shifted his approach and focused on condensing the energy, concentrating it into a smaller, denser form. When he applied this new method, Shion ignited the condensed energy with a small spark, releasing a powerful burst of magic. Both his father and Mary were astonished by the sudden surge of energy, and even Shion admitted that the outcome had surpassed his expectations. He named the new spell Flare, recognizing it as a significant breakthrough in his magical development. Encouraged by his success, Shion turned his attention to the lightning stone, attempting to interact with it. However, the result was disappointing. The magical energy he produced was still too weak to cause any noticeable reaction with the stone. Although frustrated, Shion took solace in the progress he had made, particularly in his newfound ability to manipulate the density and shape of his magical energy. Determined to push his limits further, Shion gathered a larger amount of magical energy and directed it toward the lightning stone. This time, when the energy made contact, a sudden explosion erupted, sending Shion flying to the ground. Mary and Rose immediately rushed to his side, their faces etched with worry. Shion, brushing off the concern, assured them he was fine. Mary, still shaken, remarked that she had expected the lightning to shoot in the opposite direction, but was surprised when it bounced back toward him. Shion explained that it wasn't unusual for the lightning to be drawn back to the original source of energy. Despite the mishap, Shion sensed he was on the verge of uncovering something new, though he couldn't quite grasp what it was yet. He recognized that magic held limitless potential, but his current understanding was incomplete. He realized that to progress further, he needed greater creativity and innovation. Reflecting on his journey, Shion pondered whether everything had gone too smoothly so far, leading him to believe in the illusion that this world had brought him here specifically to create magic. The thought lingered in his mind, casting a shadow of doubt over his confidence. At that moment, Shion's father returned, accompanied by his friend Grast. They sat down at the table, but Shion quickly noticed Grast's unusually somber and worried demeanor. His father broke the silence, turning to Shion with a serious expression and asking if he remembered how he had extracted the lightning ore. Shion nodded, confirming that he did. His father pointed at Grast, explaining that Grast had used Shion's method to harvest lightning ore, something that was supposedly impossible to extract. Grast had taken the method he learned from Shion to extract lightning ore and attempted to turn it into a profitable business venture. Feeling guilty about his actions, Grast apologized to Shion, admitting that he had tried to make a fortune by smuggling the lightning ore without consulting him, even though it was Shion's idea. To Grast's surprise, Shion remained calm and simply replied that he didn't see a problem with it. Grast, still astonished by Shion's nonchalant response, insisted that he had used Shion's idea for personal gain without permission. Shion reassured him that it didn't matter, showing no signs of resentment or anger. At that point, Shion's father interjected, explaining that the situation was more complicated than Grast's guilt over profiting from the idea. He revealed that during a visit to Grast's warehouse, warehouse, they discovered that the lightning stones were discharging high amounts of energy uncontrollably, making them impossible to store safely. Grast elaborated, explaining that the stones were unsuitable for energy discharge or lighting. Although people had initially purchased them, the uncontrolled discharges caused sparks and small explosions, leading to widespread complaints and declining sales. Now, the warehouse was filled with unstable stones that no one wanted. Xian's father was visibly frustrated by the situation, unsure of how to proceed. Grast turned to Xian with desperation in his voice, pleading for help. He asked Xian if he could find a way to make the stones marketable, and more urgently, if he could solve the energy discharge problem. Grast explained that if he couldn't fix the issue within 3 days, he would be forced to refund all his customers, leading to bankruptcy and the loss of his business and warehouse. Clinging to hope, Grast called Xian a genius, confident that he could find a solution. Xian's father looked sorrowfully at his friend, sharing in his distress, while Xian remained silent, deep in thought. Grast, growing anxious, began to lose hope, thinking Xian might refuse to help. But after a brief pause, Xian finally agreed to find a solution. Grast was overjoyed, but Xian tempered his excitement, cautioning that he wasn't certain of success and that Grast shouldn't set his expectations too high. Xian then approached the lightning stones, carefully observing them before asking Grast why they were arranged in such a manner. Grast explained that when the stones were placed closer together, sudden energy discharges occurred. To demonstrate, he brought 2 stones near each other, and a sharp discharge erupted between them. Xian watched intently, his mind working through the possibilities. Grast then introduced a stone he had created by melting lightning ores together. Xian asked if this melted stone would discharge energy or spark when placed near another. Grast encouraged him to try, and when Xian pressed the 2 melted stones together, nothing happened. Realizing the significance of this, Xian deduced that processing the lightning ore altered its properties. He asked Grast at what stage the energy disappeared from the stone. Grast explained that there was still some energy when the stone was broken, but it dissipated entirely during the melting process. Understanding the process, Xian nodded thoughtfully. He then took out his lighter and asked his father's permission to conduct an experiment. His father, trusting Xian's judgment, gave his approval. Xian ignited a small flame using his flare spell, focusing his magical energy to control the fire precisely. Grast was stunned, unable to believe what he had just witnessed, but Xian remained calm and urged Grast to continue his work. However, Grast couldn't ignore the spectacle he had seen. He demanded to know how Xian had produced fire from his hand. Xian responded simply, explaining that it was magic. He then looked to his father, silently seeking permission to reveal more. His father nodded, signaling his trust in Grast and approval to share the truth. Still reeling from shock, Grast turned to Xian's father, asking if he had known about Xian's magical abilities. His father confirmed that they were aware. Grast shook his head in disbelief, struggling to reconcile what he had seen. But finally, after a moment of contemplation, he admitted that witnessing it firsthand had changed his perspective. He believed in magic now because he had seen it with his own eyes. Grast turned to Xian with a curious expression, wondering if using Xian's magical fire to melt the lightning stone would produce different results. Xian, intrigued by the idea, admitted he wasn't sure but was eager to find out. Grast agreed to test the theory, cautioning that the process could take about an hour. He suggested they take a walk outside while he worked, but Xian, too excited to leave, insisted on staying to witness the outcome. The others, equally curious, chose to stay with him. After an hour of meticulous work, Grast finished reshaping the lightning stone, and they proceeded with the experiment. When Grast brought 2 of the newly forged stones close together, a spark ignited between them. Xian was elated the magical fire had indeed altered the stone's properties. The success brought congratulations from everyone present. Xian decided to name the new material Iron Lightning, confident that it would become a highly sought-after product. Fueled by their success, they immediately began producing Iron Lightning panels, and other items. For 3 days, they worked tirelessly without rest, creating innovative products like lightning lamps and magical lighters. When they finally completed their work, the satisfaction was overwhelming. Xian's father, bursting with pride, congratulated his son on the achievements, while even Mary praised him. Xian had worried that she might feel jealous again, but her genuine support reassured him. Grast, filled with gratitude, thanked Xian, acknowledging how special he was. He admitted he couldn't comprehend how Xian came up with such groundbreaking ideas. As Grast seemed on the verge of saying more, Xian's father quickly interrupted, steering the conversation in a different direction. Grast apologized, but Xian couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more Grast had wanted to reveal. As Grast bid farewell to Xian and his family, he left with a promise. He told Xian that if he ever needed anything, he would help in any way he could. Curious about Grast's words, Mary asked what he meant. Grast smiled, hinting that while they had been crafting the tools, he'd had an idea that could significantly impact his future plans. His words lingered in Xian's mind long after Grast departed. Grast's new products, the lightning lamps and magical lighters, quickly became a massive success, selling out rapidly and earning him considerable profits. Later, Xian returned to his magical experiments, driven by the desire to uncover more about his abilities. He placed a candle on the table and covered it with a glass lid, explaining that a regular flame needed oxygen to burn. He proposed testing what would happen if the candle was lit with magical fire instead. Mary guessed that the flame wouldn't go out. While Rose thought it would behave like a normal flame, Xian used his flare, spell to light the candle, and then covered it. After a few moments, he removed the cover, revealing that the magical flame continued to burn unaffected. Mary celebrated her correct guess, teasing Rose about her mistake. However, Xian was deeply intrigued by the result. The flame's persistence indicated something extraordinary. Reflecting on the outcome, Xian realized that magical fire didn't require oxygen to sustain itself. When Rose asked what that meant, Xian explained that while he wasn't entirely certain yet, it suggested that magical energy could enhance natural phenomena, making them immune to external environmental factors. Mary asked if this discovery would change anything. Xian replied that while it might not have immediate applications, it highlighted the fundamental difference between magical fire and ordinary fire, opening the door to future possibilities. Suddenly inspired, Xian used his flare, spell again, casting a flame a short distance away. He then asked Mary to direct some of her magical energy toward the flame. As soon as her energy collided with Xian's flame, a massive explosion erupted, sending Mary sprawling to the ground. Xian rushed to her side, his heart pounding with concern. Mary quickly reassured him that she was fine, admitting she was just startled by the blast. Then, with a hint of suspicion in her voice, she asked if Xian had known that would happen. Xian, still processing the unexpected result, shook his head and admitted honestly that he had no idea such a reaction would occur. Xian reflected on the earlier explosion, admitting to himself that he had only expected the flame to intensify slightly, not cause such a dramatic reaction. Mary, still puzzled by the event, questioned why the explosion had been so powerful, especially since the magical energy she had released was minimal. Xian pondered deeply, realizing she was right. Her magical energy was barely anything, yet when it touched the flare flame, it triggered a massive explosion. He mused, feeling a surge of curiosity. Determined to uncover the cause, Xian began meticulously analyzing every detail of what had happened. After careful consideration and connecting the dots, he discovered something new. Excited, he rushed to conduct another experiment, this time using a lightning stone. He directed his magical energy toward it, but unlike before, there was no explosion. Overjoyed, he exclaimed, "So that's how it works?" Rose, still trying to piece everything together, asked, "But weren't you the one who said this was magic?" Xian nodded enthusiastically, explaining that while it was magic, there was more to it than just magical energy. He described how the interaction between magical energy and air played a crucial role. When he had attempted to activate lightning magic, he had felt subtle signs of wind resistance. Moreover, when he covered the flare flame, it continued burning despite the lack of oxygen, which suggested that magical energy interacted with the air around it, amplifying physical properties rather than merely functioning in isolation. Realizing the significance of this breakthrough, Xian erupted into his trademark goofy laughter. The discovery opened new doors for his research, and both Rose and Mary shared in his excitement, thrilled by the possibilities it presented. Fueled by this newfound understanding, Xian embarked on another experiment. He revealed that Mr. Grast had completed a special request for him 2 gloves crafted from leather and paper crystal, designed to handle magical energy safely. Wearing the gloves, Xian began a series of rigorous tests. He successfully produced fire, resulting in a controlled yet massive explosion that left everyone stunned. Encouraged by the success, he shifted to lightning magic, managing to release a concentrated beam of lightning that crackled with precision and power. Standing proudly, Xian declared, "I did it! I've finally succeeded." He felt as though his research had reached an entirely new milestone. His father, watching nearby, was utterly astonished by his son's achievements. Mary rushed to Xian's side, her eyes wide with excitement, exclaiming, "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life." Overcome with emotion, Xian couldn't hold back his tears, the weight of his hard work and success overwhelming him. Mary and Rose immediately rushed to comfort him, while his father, mother, and Grass stood by, watching with immense pride. They were deeply moved by the progress Xian had made, recognizing the potential that lay within him. Later that night, when the house had quieted down, Xian couldn't shake a lingering feeling of curiosity. He overheard his father, mother, and Grass engaged in a hushed, private conversation. Unable to resist, he crept closer to listen, careful not to make a sound. Grass's voice carried through the silence. "Xian's magic is amazing. It could become a valuable asset, something truly remarkable." Xian's father responded, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "Xian is wise. He won't reveal his abilities to just anyone." Then his mother spoke softly, "He's very smart, but he's still just a child." A heavy sigh followed from his father. "What's happening is beyond my control. Xian is clever and sharp, and I won't be able to stop what he's doing. We were entrusted with him." Xian's heart skipped a beat. "Entrusted with me?" The words echoed in his mind, stirring confusion and fear. Grass nodded solemnly. "It seems Xian is adopted." The revelation hit Xian like a thunderclap. Could it be true? Am I not related to this family by blood? Xian was training diligently, and he successfully managed to break a wooden board using a lightning-based magical spell. Mary and Rose cheered him on, thrilled by his progress. They praised how much he had improved, and Shion explained that his success was due to his increasing familiarity with the spell. Grateful for their support, he sincerely thanked Mary and Rose for helping him. Afterward, his thoughts drifted back to what his father had said and the feelings Mary had expressed toward him. A realization struck him since they were not related by blood. Did that mean they could eventually get married? The thought unsettled him, and he quickly tried to push it out of his mind. Sitting alone in his room, Shion continued to ponder the significance of blood ties, but he decided that distracting himself with magic experiments would be the best way to forget about it. Determined to focus, he set his sights on advanced magic, specifically composite magic. He reasoned that composite magic worked by amplifying and concentrating magical energy, and by combining certain elements, he could enhance the strength of his spells and release them with greater force. As he delved into his experiments, Shion noted that merging certain spells together had produced no noticeable effects. Determined to understand why, he decided to conduct a new test. He went to the river and attempted his spell several times, but nothing worked. Frustration weighed heavily on him as he struggled to comprehend his failure. Mary and Rose, seeing his distress, admitted that they didn't understand either, and asked him to explain what was happening. Shion told them that in a previous experiment, they had discovered that magical energy adopted the properties of air. This time, he had wanted to see what would happen if he infused it into water. Unfortunately, nothing significant occurred, leading him to conclude that, unlike fire and lightning, magical energy did not seem to interact with water in any noticeable way. As he thought aloud, explaining his theories in detail, Mary and Rose quickly lost track of what he was saying. They exchanged glances, realizing they were struggling to follow his complex reasoning, but simply shrugged it off, having grown accustomed to his deep scientific thinking. Determined not to give up, Shion attempted another experiment. This time, he managed to achieve something caused the water to float. Mary's face lit up with excitement, thrilled by the unexpected success. She exclaimed that this proved magical energy could interact with water as well, making it a remarkable discovery. Rose, equally impressed, pointed out that this meant Shion had unlocked the potential to use water magic. Shion, overwhelmed with joy, realized that he had indeed made a new discovery. However, he also acknowledged that while the interaction existed, it was still weak and lacked practical use for now. He would need to refine his techniques further to make water-based magic a powerful and reliable tool. Shion attempted to lift the water while standing outside of it, but he failed. However, he noticed a slight dampness on his skin and paused to think. He reasoned that it made sense his ability to gather magical energy in his right hand was still limited, and the moisture he felt was equivalent to the amount of magical energy he had released. Determined to push further, Shion gathered an immense amount of magical energy, causing Mary and Rose to stare in shock. He focused his energy and successfully managed to collect water into his hands, forming a floating sphere of liquid. Mary, unable to hide her astonishment, rushed toward him and asked where the water had come from. She was almost afraid to hear his answer, wondering if he had somehow pulled it directly from the river. Shion explained that he had spread his magical energy widely and attempted to gather water particles from the air, which allowed him to form the water sphere without needing a direct water source. Fascinated, Mary then asked what he would name this new spell. Without hesitation, Shion decided to call it Aqua, given its connection to water. Excited by the discovery, Mary and Rose attempted to replicate the spell. To their delight, they succeeded, but instead of forming stable water spheres, their magic backfired, causing the water to explode in their faces. The sudden mishap sent them into fits of laughter, finding joy in their progress despite the unexpected outcome. Shion, watching them, felt genuinely happy. Seeing them master different types of magic alongside him reinforced the idea that they were all growing stronger together. Later, as Shion rode with his parents, his thoughts drifted to the next phase of his magical research. He felt that it was finally time to take his experiments to the next level, though he reminded himself not to rush. Shortly after, Shion visited the guild with Grass to accept a mission. Grass informed him that in order to take on any task, he first needed to register as an official member of the guild. Mary and Rose were also present, listening to the conversation. As Shion weighed his decision, he reminded himself why he had come. His goal was clear to test whether magic could effectively impact monsters. Grass turned to Mary and Rose, about to tell them they didn't need to accompany Shion. However, before he could finish, Mary firmly declared that she wouldn't run away this time. She admitted that if she continued to run, she would never stop, and she was determined to become stronger. Rose echoed her determination, stating that she, too, wanted to grow stronger. Seeing their resolve, Grass nodded in agreement. With their decision made, the group prepared for the mission. Before setting out, Shion made one last request to Grass. He asked him to keep everything they were doing a secret from his parents. As they entered the guild, Grass introduced himself as a platinum-ranked adventurer. The guild receptionist asked what he needed, and he requested 3 registration forms for the children. Just as she was about to hand them over, she asked, "Are these 2 here to support them?" Confused, Grass asked, "What 2?" Turning around, he was shocked to see Shion's parents standing behind them. The entire group froze in surprise. Shion's father stepped forward and calmly stated, "I'm here to support them as well. I'm an adamantite-ranked adventurer." The entire guild fell silent in shock. An adamantite rank was incredibly rare. The guild members whispered among themselves, astonished that someone of such a high rank was standing before them. Without further discussion, Xian's father simply said, "Register yourselves first. We'll talk later." Once they stepped outside, Xian's father looked at them and asked, "Is there anything you'd like to say?" Feeling guilty, they all apologized. His father sighed. "I expected this." Xian hesitated before asking, "So father, you knew we would register to fight monsters?" His father nodded. "I didn't know exactly what you were planning, but I knew you were up to something. Mary, for example, has been avoiding eye contact with me and your mother when she speaks." Mary, feeling guilty, apologized again. Their father sighed and said, "I never imagined you'd plan something this reckless." They apologized again, but before their father could respond, Grass stepped in to defend them. They thought about this carefully. "Please don't be too hard on them." Xian's father gave him an unimpressed look and said, "You are the last person who should be speaking." Turning back to the group, he asked, "Tell me exactly what you were planning." After listening to their reasoning, he nodded in approval. "Good. You didn't come here for fun, and the only thing I'll commend you for is that you didn't come alone. You brought someone responsible with you. If I hadn't followed you, I believe you would have been safe under Grass's care." Then his expression hardened. "However, I can't guarantee safety in this world. So if you ever decide to do something dangerous again, come to me first. Having strong adventurers with you will always be an advantage." Xian's eyes widened. "Does that mean you're joining us?" His father nodded. "Yes, I will accompany you." The entire group cheered in excitement. With Xian's father leading them, they headed into the wilderness to hunt monsters. Soon they encountered a group of 4 beasts. Xian's father stood alone against them while the others watched. As the monsters lunged at him, he effortlessly eliminated them with blinding speed. Grass, watching in awe, laughed and said, "You're still as monstrous as ever." Xian's father smirked. "I think we'll be safe for now." Xian, on the other hand, was speechless. He had always known his father was strong, but he never imagined he was this powerful. He began to doubt their presence there, thinking, "Do we even have a purpose here?" Noticing Xian's reaction, his father turned to him and said, "More monsters will come. Next time you will fight them yourselves." As expected, more monsters appeared shortly after. Xian's father observed them and said, "These are weaker than goblins. They should be good for your first battle." Mary looked nervous as the monsters began to charge. Xian's father quickly organized their formation and reassured them, "These monsters don't have long-range attacks." Xian's eyes lit up with realization. That means magic will be effective against them. Xian launched his attack, unleashing a powerful spell that took down several monsters. However, another beast was about to strike him from behind when Mary intervened just in time, saving him. Rose was also holding her own in battle, fighting skillfully. Regaining his focus, Xian, Mary, and Rose continued their assault together, working in perfect sync. Soon they managed to defeat the remaining monsters, believing they had won. But just as they let their guard down, a final monster emerged from behind them. At the last moment, Xian struck it down, saving them all. They took a deep breath, relieved, and exchanged words of gratitude. Mary smiled and said, "I can fight as long as you're by my side, Xian. I feel more confident in myself now." Meanwhile, Xian was lost in thought. Blood ties don't matter, he realized. Mary will always be my one and only big sister in this world. Their father then approached them, praising their performance. "You all did great. Your movements were impressive." Then, to their shock, he added, "Now, on to the second battle." Xian's eyes widened in disbelief. "A second battle?" His father explained, "There's no better chance than this to gain real combat experience. I've already spotted tracks of more monsters nearby. Let's go." Once again, they fought fiercely and emerged victorious. However, fatigue was setting in. Mary, completely drained, collapsed onto the ground and panted, "I can't fight anymore." Their father reassured them, praising their progress once again. Grass, watching from the side, chuckled, "I feel like I didn't do anything." Xian smirked, admitting, "Keeping up with you all in battle is proving to be quite the challenge." Mary, however, looked at things differently. "But we gained experience. We now know that we're actually good in battle." Xian agreed, and Rose added, "We've also learned a lot of things we didn't know before." Their father nodded and said, "Grass and I will take care of collecting the loot. You all should rest for now." As they rested, Xian's attention was drawn to a dark cave. He felt an urge to investigate and decided to enter, with Mary and Rose following hesitantly. As they ventured inside, Mary and Rose shivered with unease. "We shouldn't be here," they whispered. "It's too dark and dangerous." Then, a faint glow appeared deeper inside the cave. Intrigued, they moved closer and discovered a fairy trapped inside a cage. Xian approached her, but the fairy instinctively tried to flee. Mary and Rose watched as he calmly said, "Of course we're going to set her free." Both Mary and Rose agreed without hesitation. Carefully, Xian opened the cage. The fairy stared in disbelief before finally flying out. The three of them watched in awe, amazed to see a fairy soaring freely before their eyes for the first time. The fairy gracefully bid them farewell before disappearing into the wilderness. Xian hoped she would return safely to her home, returning home and facing their mother's wrath. When they arrived home, Xian's father looked anxious, sensing trouble ahead. Before he could slip away, his wife caught him. "Dear, I need to speak with you. Alone." Moments later, Xian's father's panicked screams echoed through the house. When his mother returned, she looked calm as she asked, "What happened?" Both Xian and Mary froze in terror. Once they sat down to talk, their mother confronted them. "Hunting monsters, huh? I already knew everything." Xian's eyes widened in shock. Wait, you knew? His mother nodded. Your father told me before he even left the house. Shion hesitated before asking, then, why did you react like this? His mother sighed. Because it's rare for me to see you both return home with your father while covered in injuries. I know your father well. When he focuses on something, he becomes blind to everything else. I'm certain he took the opportunity to kill as many monsters as possible while leaving you all to risk your lives. Shion and Mary felt guilty hearing this. Don't misunderstand me, their mother continued.